Hi everyone, I hope you're surviving the coronavirus situation as well as well, I guess everyone can. I'm just doing a quick video on how to start the next assignment. I know we've just been through a lot, so just one more to sort of keep you going in this hard time, just in case you're running out of things to do after that massive 3D portfolio. So we're looking at briefs in the creative media industries and how to understand them, the different types of them. Okay. So what is a brief? A document that explains the requirements of a project. It generally contains one of at least of the following. Sorry, I'm not very good at videos. I like to look at people and talk. So you generally it's explaining what you want from a project. So it's telling people everything you need them to do. So that the brief is actually what goes to the people making it from the person who requires it. So it can have, the size of a project, the file format. Is it needed anything? We're looking at games, of course. So it does depend on what part of the game you're doing. So it might be the sound of a game. It might be the script. It could be certain 3D models, so of course that all comes down to sort of amount, size, file format, style and brand of the company. So what the client wants. So if Nintendo came to you and asked for a certain thing, that they'd want a very particular way of doing things. They're not going to want sort of like Doom style gore and horror. They're going to want a very particular family-friendly take on things. What the project hopes to achieve. So basically the outcome, and often how do they put it? It's often the underlying motif and sort of key words of the project. So what does it want to do? Does it want to make a cheerful platformer? Does it want to just have a really good storyline and gameplay comes second? There's lots of different focuses that a project can have. Target audience, I don't need to say anything about that. You understand those by now, and you can look into certification and things if you want. Timing, which is really important, as you all know that crunch is a terrible thing in the industry at the moment. So timing is crucial, and they say crunch is never necessary if a manager manages well or something to that effect. So obviously a time that you stick to that is realistic is very important. Budget, how much money you can spend. All the stakeholders. Basically they're the big higher ups that tell people what you want. It's often how games go from sort of passion projects down to how can we get the most money, but that's just the state of the industry. The message of the project. What is the underlying big push of everything? So I think Stuart calls it the elevator pitch. So in 10 words, can you explain the point of everything you're doing? So that is a brief. The brief goes from the client to the people making it. So I've purposely put the mouse to go around here just to irritate a few of you, but also point out things while I'm talking about things. So the brief context: demographic, who's it for? Geographic, where is it based? Market competition, what area it already exists? What use, what needs to be marketed and advertised? Style, message, brand of client, and technical specification, size, frames per second, etc. So these are all the things you need to be thinking about when you're creating a brief. A lot of these are very obvious. Geographic's a bit of an interesting one, so that's obviously much more localization. We talked about the importance of localization and sort of cultural awareness not so long ago. Market competition is always a key part, especially these days where there's about 1,000 different games coming out on app stores and Steam and everything constantly. So you need to really make sure that you're not just copying and pasting one that already exists. What needs to be marketed and advertised? So what's the point of it? What's the hook? And the rest of it we've just talked about the other ones, but they are on the list of what a brief should contain. Oh, click. I've clicked somewhere else. There we go. Just like in class. So different types of brief. Sorry, it's a tambourine. Non-negotiable, contractual briefs. These are very formal briefs, so you have non-negotiable, so they are telling you what they want. They're given directly to a production house or media company. They have clearly set guidelines, and generally large-scale products with very little room for manoeuvre. So they are saying, "We want this, and you have to deliver." It's very, very formal situation. These would be like your AAA situations. So they've already done all the designing and everything they're willing to do. They now want you to just do what they want. I mean, very rarely you'll get a few ideas pitched here and there that might go through, but generally, it's there. You have to complete it as they want. Opposite side of it, negotiated brief. So this is a project that gets discussed instead. The production company has an input, so they can actually suggest things rather than just do what they're told. Ideas from client can be negotiated. Basically it's a more fluid process, more informal. Small scale projects can have this, especially with small teams. I mean, a lot of indie game dev teams are between 3 and 8 people, so that can be an office where they can literally just talk to each other and almost have like a perma meeting state where they can be sort of changing things as they go along. There's horror stories about people trying to implement changes towards the end, but that's a different story altogether. The negotiated brief is what they intend from the start. Click. Okay. Formal and informal briefs. So I mentioned formal and informal before. That those were more descriptions of the negotiated contractual briefs. Formal and informal briefs are another type of brief. So formal has meetings, take minutes. They have to. Basically, it's a far more regimented process where they've got to do everything by the book. Everyone's got to sign off. There's a hierarchy where people have to do what the higher up says, and they can't go off key. They've got to sort of note everything down they're doing. So generally, everything's far more sort of dovetailed and together, and it's more of a cohesive unit that allows for higher quality, the sort of larger scale things, but sometimes it can feel like the people actually working on it don't have much of a say in how the game is going, and that they can feel like a cog in the machine. The opposite side of that is the informal, which is the one we talked about, a sort of a version of the one we talked about a moment ago, where we have sort of small, not so much formalised meetings, much more sort of an open discussion. So it says little discussion there, but what that means is little formal discussion. So quick, no meetings. So they might just have sort of a constant fluidity, like we said earlier. More control to the production company, potentially lower quality and less detail on smaller scale products. So if you haven't got everyone on the same team and you're trying to make it as informal as possible, then you are going to lose some of the focus that you get from the big formal meetings where everything's put into one sort of one large push for production. Right, a commission brief you all know what commissions are probably from things like artists online. So a commission is where, of course, you commission an artist to get a piece of art, and technically you're not buying the rights to it, you're just commissioning them to create it. That's not quite what the commission brief is here. It's actually a brief that allows compensation to the client. It's more of a if you haven't done exactly what we want, then we can apply for a refund. It just has that sort of stipulation to it. Of course, if you do get it refunded, then the product is not purchased, so it's not legally usable by the person who requested it in the first place. So there you go. It's a bit of a balance. Tender brief is an interesting one. It's often seen when in sort of like a sneaky way when companies set out a competition. They say who can design the best art or best music for this that we're going to do, and then they choose the best one out of that, and they say your reward is being included in our marketing campaign, and you get some credit. Fantastic. That's not quite great for sort of workers' rights and things, but this exists, so you should know about it. The companies put out lots of people propose what they would do for the brief. And that's great, but then the company's already put in lots and lots of time for it. It takes a long time to sort of review everything for the production teams to actually pitch to something they want to do. It can lead to very unique approaches, but of course it's a very long process and not particularly worthwhile to a lot of everything. Look at that, that's a spell mistake. Okay, live. So a cooperative brief is exactly what it says on the tin. So something that, look at this, something that has multiple teams working on it at the same time. So a brief that's intended for multiple production houses or media companies. A lot more input can be there, and complex work can be undertaken because lots of different things are being put in from different places, and no one person is responsible for everything. But of course you need very clear communication, which is where sort of formal meetings and things come into the fore. So a formal cooperative brief, because you can have a brief that's more than one thing, is actually a very helpful conjunction. Ooh, click. Okay. Competition brief. So this is the not even hiding it version of the tender brief, where they literally say it's a competition. They say send stuff in. So rather than sort of allowing pitches to come from a few companies they choose, they say, all right, everyone send stuff in, and we'll choose the best one. Again, it's an even worse version than the tender brief. Competition brief. It's a way of getting a lot of free stuff that they can pick and choose from very quickly, with generally a small prize just to sort of tick things along. Okay, so we've done the types of brief now. We've seen them all. We can see how they mix up. So contractual and negotiated brief are sort of like they are the formal and informal versions. Then you get the formalized and informal briefs, which sort of tack on to other ones. So you're very likely to have an informal negotiated brief and a formal contractual brief even, and you can mix that up further. So you could have a tender brief that is formalized because you give out exactly what you want, and that the way forward you'd want to have a very clear vision. If you were to make it an informal tender brief, then you're going to give a lot of freedom to the company that pitches and you choose, which is a bit of a risk for the client. Okay, sorry, I'm flicking between everything. So now we've got a few keywords that you just should be aware of. So the briefs are done and dusted. Now we're just looking at things that you should be aware of within the sort of brief setting. So negotiation, consultation, meeting with the clients to agree terms and discuss the criteria of both sides of the brief. It's basically what to consult to check things with someone. That's basically what's going on here. Click. Sorry, my computer is not happy with me today. There we go. Discretion: the freedom to decide what should be done in a particular situation. So how closely must the brief be followed? Is there scope for variation? So discretion, like to use, how far can you push your own ideas in that situation? Constraints. So you've got to make sure that a brief is meeting certain requirements, especially like we were talking about not so long ago, sort of legal, ethical, and these kind of things, regulatory within sort of job roles and things. So there's quite a few things that you have to make sure that you're not pushing when you're actually creating a brief and asking things of companies, and of course then following through with that product. Amendments, exactly what it says on the tin. These are any changes that occur throughout the process. Informal, so you can see here in informal briefs, there's a lot more focus on making sure everything's signed off, so everything's together. Okay. then you get the usual offerings that a brief would say that they can give back to the people who are being given it. So it all sounds very curriculum vitae type things. So there's opportunities for self-development where you can sort of learn communication and practical skills and creative skills. You also get multitasking, so you can learn these skills as well. That it's basically one of those things where you say, you know, on this job you will learn such skills as blah blah blah. So you get in this case self-development, multitasking, that kind of thing, and contributions. So of course a contributor, a person who's working, an employee in this case, can offer something that can be taken into the project and further it, and of course be credited, which is a very key part in the industry. Okay. So the first thing you should be doing is defining each type of brief with examples. Gaming industry examples are preferred, but they can be quite hard to find altogether. Remember that you're only looking at the actual briefs, and do remember that you know it's a contractual brief. That's going to be a AAA brief. You can assume things like Final Fantasy or God of War would be contractual because they have to be. Negotiated is look more to the very indie type briefs. You know things like Shovel Knight would not be the case, just because that they're pretty clear on what they're doing. They've had a setup. Their Kickstarter showed their production plans and everything. So that's sort of high end indie. Think sort of indie. I guess the way, without giving too much away. Formal, informal. Again, you can assume things. So it might be something like you know, the Mario games would be actually quite formal because it'd have to be, because of course Nintendo wants things exactly the way they want them. Whereas informal might be sort of, you know, the smaller app games, or more experimental smaller games that just, you know, appear on the Flash sites on the website, if they even have a brief at all. So think a little outside the box for those. You don't need to define all the terms, sort of opportunities and consultation and everything, just because they are terms and language you should be thinking of using within your your brief definitions if possible. Okay, you've also got a few other bits and pieces, but you can come back to those in the for now. For the first one, you just want to get this first assignment task done, where you define the different types of brief. Okay. Some interesting little extras that I found recently. Apparently Bitsy is getting a 3D beta. I've no idea how it works. I imagine it's like a Tega's game, but you know, with more restricted colours. I also found this, which I thought was quite funny. Oh look, it's cut it off completely. Let's look. It's a take on, but it's quite clever. There's depth to this. It's got Animal Crossing. It's got the Untitled Goose Game. It's got the issue with toilet paper being taken. It's also got Tom Nook and sort of like people's talk of him being sort of on a capitalist agenda. Of course, we know that he's actually the good guy, but that's too much going. And we then got a mixture of Animal Crossing and Doom sharing the same release date. I thought it was quite a nice little take on current affairs altogether. Good little comic. Okay, that's everything for today. Just make sure that you are staying safe, and above all, you know, wash your hands and don't get ill. I'll do another one of these for future work. So if you've got any questions or anything, do just ask, and I will endeavour to answer them in the next video. Okay, see you soon.